Channel news. I'm filming inside my house this time. I didn't feel like being outside. We got a little bit of snow, but it's melting pretty quick when it goes above freezing. It hasn't melted today, but yeah, it's too cold today. Besides, the wind is blowing quite a bit. You can see the flag here. So yeah, it was too cold. Unfortunately, we can't hear the bells, but this is a lot more comfortable. All right. My name is Patrick. The channel name is Jack Crafty. I've been doing Flintknapping mainly on the channel, but I'm going to be branching out into other things. Now that I have more time, I'll be able to spend more time on bows and arrows, and ladle darts and ladles and other kinds of projectile weapons. Maybe even some slings, but mainly just arrows, bows and arrows. But I like making arrows, bows not so much. But one of the reasons why I got into Flintknapping is so I can make arrowheads for arrows. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to try to think up questions and do this like a question and answer, and then I'm going to read an excerpt from this book here. Let's see, Ishi in Two Worlds. Okay, I ordered a bunch of books, and I've got some on Ishi, so I'll be reading excerpts out of the books. Yeah. This one has got some exaggerated commentary in it, but it's still okay. It's still pretty good as far as general basic knowledge of who Ishi is. Okay. Question and answer. I got a question recently on why do some arrowheads have really long barbs, ridiculously long barbs, and I got a couple pictures of over the years, after doing lots of research on arrows and arrowheads, I've gotten that question quite a bit. Why the barbs also? Why the serrations? Why the needle tips? Because they don't make much sense for hunting, and that's true. It doesn't make much sense for hunting when you could just use a triangle or even an oval-shaped point for hunting with no notches. Something very simple, and they don't have to be very long either. They can be short. Why the long, narrow, skinny, very delicate needle tips arrowheads with barbs and stuff sometimes, and lots of serrations? And the conclusion I came up with is those are war arrows, war arrowheads, for war arrows, or used in conflict with humans. Now, they can also be used to shoot predators, animal predators like wolves and bears and stuff like that, but usually those arrowheads are more robust. Okay, and why the long barbs? Getting back to the original question, I've read accounts that Indians would shoot their enemies in the gut with the arrows because that causes a lot more damage and pain. And if you have a barbed arrowhead that's got really long barbs, if you hit your enemy in the gut, it's not going to hit bone. It's going to go into flesh. So the barbs will not encounter anything unless it goes far enough to hit the spine or whatever. But it's not going to encounter much as far as something that'll break the arrowhead or break the barbs off. So then you got that issue where you have a barbed arrowhead in your gut. You're not going to be fighting after that. And it's very difficult to extract, and it's pretty gruesome. Okay? But that's, in my research, that's what I've come up with. Okay. Those really delicate, long, needle-tipped arrowheads, in addition to the barbs and all that, are for warfare. And, of course, you can also shoot other predators, animal predators, with those as well. And it has the same effect, basically. It's very damaging if the target is gut shot. Okay. Something else. Let's see. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Let me just see if I can come up with a question that I had recently. Yeah, I've been looking for substitutes for arrow wood because I do a lot of research on what arrows belong to what tribes, what are the designs for these different arrows in different parts of the country, what woods are used, and then what wood can I substitute for a certain wood if I want to reproduce an arrow. So I was looking around. I spent part of the day today scouting out a new area for arrow wood, and I found a lot of viburnum, but I also found some gray dogwood, I think. And I found a patch of silky dogwood as well. So I found a spot where I can get those three. I'm pretty sure it's gray dogwood, but it might be some other version, some other species of dogwood. I'll need to look at it this spring. I'm going to cut a few shoots of that so I can season them, and cut some shoots of the viburnum and the silky dogwood as well this year, and build up my inventory because I'll be doing a lot of testing. Now, the substitute, getting back to the original question, what can I substitute for what? It appears that for instance, Ishi, the Indian, used or liked to use hazelwood for his arrows. Now, we have hazelwood here, but I can't find any. So I was looking up the specific gravity of hazelwood and seeing if there's any woods around here that match that specific gravity. And the closest one I found was alder buckthorn. We have a lot of alder buckthorn here, which is invasive, but it's very similar in specific gravity or density or weight to hazelwood. Okay, and I wrote some notes in the book as I was reading through to find an excerpt that I could read. I wrote some notes down on the specific gravity of various wood species. So that's going to help. I can come up with a lot of alder buckthorn and make some Ishi arrow reproductions and shoot them with a wood that matches very closely to the hazelwood that he liked to use. But he used all kinds of wood. He used birch dowels and stuff like that. So when he was within civilization, so to speak, and working at a museum and living at the museum, he used dowels a lot for his arrows. But before that, he would use wood shoots and reeds and stuff. Okay. Let's see, what else was I doing today? Anything else I can think of? I'm looking for hickory. I found hickory trees, but I'm looking for young hickory saplings. I'll have to wait until the spring because I was looking for that today, and I said, no, I can't tell by the bark. There's too many trees that have very similar bark around here. I can find the black locust pretty easy because of the thorns, but the other stuff, it could be, and the birch is easy to see, but all the other stuff, the maples and the oaks and that kind of thing, when they're younger, the bark tends to look similar. As the trees age, the bark becomes more distinctive. But I'm looking around for saplings and stuff, and it's difficult. So I'll wait till the spring to see if I can pick up some hickory in small diameters to make hickory arrows, because they used to use hickory in this area along with arrowwood viburnum for arrows. Okay. All right, so I'll read the excerpt from this book that I thought was interesting on the arrows that Ishi would make. Okay? Let's see. It says here he preferred the thin, straight stems of hazel to other wood for arrow shafts. Now, hazel has a specific gravity of 0.53 to 0.63. Okay? This is a side note. Another side note is buckthorn has a specific gravity of 0.50 to 0.61. So it's within the same general range. So I'll be using buckthorn if I can't find hazel for reproducing some of Ishi's arrows. Okay. Again, quoting from the book now. As when making a bow, the arrows also were seasoned laying face up. What that means is, without going back into the book, face up means for arrows, it is where the top of the shoot is. That's face up. For bows, it's where the branch that the bow's made of is facing the trunk of the tree. Okay, so when you cut like a bow, when you cut it off, cut off the branch, that part that's closest to the trunk is the face or the top. Now the face is a combination of the top and the back of the bow. The belly is not the face of the bow. On a bow, it's a combination of the top, so to speak, and the face or the back of the bow. I know it gets confusing, but the arrow is what's important in this description. Okay, so it was important to season these things in a certain way for Ishi and in general Indians in North America in general, that they would be very cautious about how they were stored, how the wood was stored when seasoning. It was like a superstitious thing. In this case, okay, when it has to be face up. All right. And that was a footnote, right? Okay. Again, quote again here. It was Ishi's custom to make arrows in groups of 5. 5 were carried through the various steps of manufacture together, and only when they were completed and laid aside to season might another 5 be commenced. The hazel stick, which was to become an arrow, was first peeled of its bark, then any irregularities were straightened by the process of rolling over heated stones, after which it was smoothed with sandstone and given a final polishing by rolling back and forth across the thigh, a technique reminiscent of hand polishing of fine furniture, in which the body oil contributes its finish applied by hand friction. Arrows were made to measure the distance from the base of the breastbone to the extended index finger, with the left arm stretched out along the arrow shaft in shooting position, 29 inches for Ishi in this case. Some, although by no means all, of Ishi's arrows were made with a foreshaft of heavier wood about 8 inches long. In order to fit the two parts of such an arrow together, Ishi used a piece of bone ground to a sharp point, which he placed upright in the earth and held in position with his feet. Onto this he set the main shaft perpendicularly, rotating it between the open palms of his hand until a tapered hole an inch or more in depth had been drilled out. Now in this description, it says perpendicular. I think that might be incorrect. Okay, it should be parallel, I'm thinking here. Yeah, because the main shaft would be set parallel with the drill bit, not perpendicular to the drill bit. Okay, the drill bit made of bone was stuck in the ground. So, and then he would rub his hands together to get the drill working. Okay, all right. All right, so placed upright on the earth and held in position with his feet. Onto this, he set the main shaft. Okay, I read that already. Rotating it between the open palms of his hands until a tapered hole an inch or more in depth had been drilled out. He then cut a spindle at the end of the foreshaft to fit in the hole and secured it in the hole with resin or glue. Okay, so in order to drill with bone, I found you have to have very soft wood. So in this case, the hazel was probably quite pithy, and as well as being soft, in order for that bone drill to work. Now, a stone drill works much better, but he used, in this case, under observation, he used a bone drill. I've got to find a good, suitable bone. I think pig bone will work for this particular exercise. And I think buckthorn will be soft enough to drill this way as well. So I'm going to try that eventually on video. Okay. Although Ishi usually painted his arrows using a simple 2-color ring design, much less interest attached to decorating than to feather them. Some words are missing in here. There was much less interest in decorating them than fletching them. Okay. The preferred feathers were eagle, but he used buzzard, blue jay, and others. He mounted the feathers in sets of 3, each set from a single wing, a custom generally observed by good bowmen everywhere. The angle of feathers to shafts affects the flight of an arrow. Ishi feathered at an angle of less than 90 degrees. That is, he mounted the feathers so that they leaned sideways away from the perpendicular. So he slanted the he slanted the feather on the shaft. Usually a shaft, feathers are mounted on the shaft straight, perpendicular. But he slanted his. Okay? Let's see. Yeah, he feathered at an angle of less than 90 degrees, which is the more usual angle. Yeah. The result in flight was that his arrows left the bow with a better spin and greater accuracy at close range, which was what he wanted, not the greater speed and distance which his method sacrificed. Okay? So that's the excerpt that I'm going to read from the book this week. There's a lot more written about Ishi's bows and arrows, but I don't want to read too long because I get diminishing returns the longer I read. I don't articulate very well. Okay, so you get the idea on that, right? The arrows, and there are illustrations of his arrows as well, so we don't have to go only by that. But the interesting part is, when I make arrows, I try to grind the quill of the arrow as flat as possible and also perpendicular to the veins. But if I want to make one of his arrows, I got to make sure the fletching slants a little bit. Now, there's probably also a cant, or a I don't know the word to say that it's offset slightly so that it spirals in the air. Okay, there's a term for fletching. Spiral fletching is probably what he used, but I need to look at the illustrations more closely. So I think he used a combination of a spiraling fletch and a fletch that was not at 90 degrees to the shaft. Okay, but he may have used a straight fletch and not a spiral fletch. Okay, I have to look at that. I'm going to go into that detail and also the exact length of the feathers and all that, and the height of the feathers. Everything is exact as I possibly can when I shoot his style of arrows. And I will also try to use his method of shooting, which is very unusual. It's not the typical pulling with these fingers. It's pulling. Well, you'll see. He pulls it almost with a thumb pull. Okay? It's a combination. It's like a hybrid thumb pull. It's very odd. He puts the string between, it looks like his index fingernail and his thumb, and pulls it that way. Okay? And I think the majority of his bows pulled at about 40 pounds. Okay. I'm not sure if it's the middle finger or the index finger or maybe both, he clamped a string between. Okay. So yeah, I'll use that pinch hold as well. That sort of thing. And there are descriptions of his bows and how he measured those, because everything is measured according to the size of the archer. Okay. All right, I think that's it for this week. I want to see how this works out. If it works out, I'll film indoors more often. But I still prefer to be outdoors. And the new spot that I scouted out looks like I could film there too. I just don't want to be interrupted by hikers along the trail, which I find is very common. I got to look for a spot that's very low traffic. All right. Okay. There you go. That's it.